Hello and welcome everybody to episode 68 of Comic DNA. Today we're doing a creator hangout, taking a little pause from my X-Men discussion with my good buddy Alex Harner. And today I am talking with, I want to make sure I get your name right now, Christopher Michael or possibly Christopher Orndorff. You gave me both names, and you are kind of in an identity crisis now, if I'm not mistaken, about how you're going to credit yourself in your books.
Well, you nailed the last name there, so, I gotta applaud that.
Yeah, well,
I figured that one out. Most people say that last name wrong, which over the years has led me to want to just go by the first and middle, which is what I'll probably start publishing my books under is Christopher Michael, but yeah, Christopher Michael Orndorff, they'll both always be around in some capacity, I'm sure, because that's how I announce myself sometimes.
Well, we'll go.
I'm hoping it works.
We'll go with Christopher Michael for now, but I empathize. I mean, I don't think that I have a particularly confusing name. I haven't actually said my name yet. My name is Aaron Walther, but I mean, I get all the time. I get Walter, or a lot of people want to add an S to it for some reason. They call me Aaron Walters. Like it's like it's natural to pluralize it or something. It's strange, but. So yeah. I definitely can empathize with you with the last name.
For sure, on everything. Anything that comes with names, They are so pointless, but yet you can't really believe that when you say it. You know they're pointless, but you really can't stop thinking about them because it's, identification.
Right.
Your thoughts.
So, Christopher, you and I met, God, it's been a few years now. It was
Small Press Expo, was that it?
I couldn't remember if it was Small Press or possibly... was one of the Project Comic Cons. Have you gone to any of those?
I think that was the first year they had it at the hotel, and it was a pretty good turnout size. I think we did meet there, but the first time I ever really talked to you for any length of time was at the Small Press Expo.
Small Press, yeah. I mean,
that was the first year.
We've seen each other at a few conventions since then, but yes, I do remember that now. Yeah, the Small Press, the first year they did the Small Press, St. Louis Small Press Expo, I should clarify.
Yeah,
because you had your big setup for Head Metal Comics.
That's correct. Yeah.
And now you are primarily a comic book writer. Am I correct?
Yes, I cannot draw. I try every once in a while to try and tell myself that I see other people who can't draw doing cool comics that they've done and just made the artwork for just a little small something, nothing serious. And I try it, and it just I never really want to show it to anyone. So
yes, you are speaking my language. Like, I know exactly what you mean. As somebody who's been making comics, and I like all kinds of comics, and I'll look at somebody who's clearly not a great artist, but the way I would always describe it is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's whatever they're doing, even though it's not great, the whole thing comes together and it's great. And I'm thinking, I should really be able to try and do that. And it's like every time I try, no way. It just doesn't happen.
Well, the last guy that I worked with, Ian Wood, on the Occupy Butterfly book, which, sorry if I'm jumping ahead to different things, but just it's related to this, is so Ian Wood will show me his style, and he can do really technical, beautiful stuff, but then he can also just do this really quick stuff. He's like, here, just let me show you how to make these lines. He was showing me how to draw this face and a butterfly on the books, and he's like, just do it like that. And, in the moment, I would do it pretty cool. But then when he leaves and I'm trying to take it further, it's not happening.
Yeah. I feel you. I know how that is. But yeah,
I'm looking at an amazing piece of art of yours right now, though. That's actually what distracted me that popped up on the screen. Right? From Birdlander. I think it's the final chapter.
I wish I could take credit for that. That's some incredible art by my good friend and hetero life mate, as he demands to be called, Ed Bickford, or Edwin
Oh,
Bickford.
For sure.
Yeah,
I know. I started following Ed once I, saw Birdlander and what you introduced me to Ed's art. So yeah, I knew that. I'm just saying it popped up and now I'm looking at it and it caught my attention. And it's good writing too, though, because I have gone back and actually read, I don't think I'm all the way through it because I've kind of read it in broken pieces when I've had it, because I had the first 3 issues and then as you were releasing it online. But yeah, Birdlander's good.
Well, thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say. But you haven't finished it yet, so maybe the ending will ruin it for you. So I have to take that with a grain of salt. But
Well,
uh,
there's the page that just popped up that I'm looking at is a dinosaur reptile monster being
mhm.
about to rip off a guy's head on his motorcycle,
Yeah, that is near
and it
the end.
says, "Yeah, I pushed too many people away from me, and that is a mistake I have only now come to realize." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like what Aaron writes about on Facebook sometimes."
Yeah, I mean maybe it's a little. I don't know. I I'd like to think that a lot of my writing, like my personality, comes through in my writing, and I put myself into everything. I think that's natural for writers.
Yeah,
I would
for
say
sure.
that I would ask, do you think that you're the same way?
Oh, 100%. I mean, to even more ridiculous points. Again, like, that's a very human feeling in general,
Hmm.
but then just what little I know of you, which is basically through your writing, honestly. When you get to know someone through their writing and
Hmm.
just their, not that you're a big Facebook ranter, but when you write things that you're kind of putting out there more towards the people who are reading your stuff and like advertising yourself as a writer, then you get more glimpses when you follow someone like that. And that's actually, kind of how I decide if I'm paying attention to someone in the
Hmm.
comics world. It's because they're not crazy on social media, but they offer some good insights and knowledge and share things. And then their work is obviously good and something to admire and go from there.
Well, that is something that I've become like almost like hyper concerned about is just like social media and how everybody interacts on it. Because traditionally, I don't think I've ever been particularly good at maneuvering social media. Like I'm a pretty small fish in terms of the internet world, and I don't have a lot of followers or with any things that I do. But I also don't really like push it and try to I don't like every I think I might have like 350 friends on Facebook, and I don't know if I actually friended any of them myself. Like I just like created a Facebook, and most of my friends that I knew, I friended all of them, and then just over the last like 5 years, I've just accrued people from meeting them at conventions or whatnot. But like I'm only saying this in contrast to like my co-creator, the co-creator of the Birdlander, Edwin B. Bickford. He's such a like a uh, outspoken, like out there kind of guy, and he'll just like troll through Facebook, and if he sees art he likes, he's just like, oh, add friend, add friend, add friend. Like he's
Yeah.
like, and he's got like thousands of friends, and I don't know, it's just not who I am. Like I just don't do that. But
Yeah,
no, go ahead,
it's
go ahead.
always changing on Facebook too how they handle what they're letting your people see anyway. But yeah, I gotta
Oh
say,
yeah.
I think it's so much easier for the artist, and I say this because everything else for the artist is harder. I want to
Yeah.
make that clear, like doing all of the artwork and everything and making sequential art, they got that whole responsibility.
Hmm.
But as a writer, as you know, you can only write so many things on Facebook and that are going to engage with people. And like if you're writing little essays and stuff, putting them up there and trying to make little funny stories and whatnot, you can get people to read that, but it's a lot harder than just a dope piece of art that you just did.
Yeah, I agree, and that's something that like I guess something that like really concerns me about like Facebook and Twitter, and that really bothers me is how how many people use it for different reasons, and it can be really frustrating. Uh, like the amount of people that want to use it for networking. And like what I like on Facebook is I have most of my friends are other comic book creators in some fashion. So I like seeing people post art or talking about business or just comics related things, and it can be really frustrating when you are following somebody on Facebook and they will occasionally post stuff like that, but then most of the time they just post nonsense about whatever else, and I'm not even necessarily talking about like political stuff, which seems to have certainly exploded over the last couple of years. It's like all people want to rant about, but But I'm not even specifically referring to that. It's just it can be really frustrating to try and like cultivate like what you want to see on social media versus what people want to put out there. I don't know if I'm exactly making myself clear here.
I think it can just be summed up by saying social media is really hard, and
Yeah.
the people that figure it out and are actually making an income by, steady advertising on places like Facebook are doing something right, because it
Yeah.
ain't easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but you're right. It does have that complete other side that's just bullshit that you just can't get away of. That you're just like, man.
Yeah. That's
Um,
why I don't really think I spend so much time on social media. Most of the time, if I'm on Facebook, it's because Ed is messaging me to show me the latest panel that he drew and
well,
asking
that's
me.
awesome.
Yeah, well, Ed's an artist, so he constantly needs to be told how great he is. Ed's gonna get a kick out of listening to this episode.
Yeah.
We have
What's
multiple
up,
mentions
Ed?
to
Good
it. Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. No, but that actually, one of my favorite guys, Josh, and I don't know how, I've only heard his last name said once or twice. I'm pretty sure it's Dysart.
Yeah,
Just how you said it.
Joshua Dysart. Yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about the joy of being a writer and getting pages in whatever way, shared over social media or in an email or whatever, opening up that package is just being like, a very different feeling that, at least the artist doesn't get to have all that fun,
Right.
'Cause they usually get to be the hot shots, which they deserve because they're doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, it's
But,
like comics are.
getting a package of the words that you wrote coming to life, like there's still something just money about opening those files.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
And that's the only money because there's no other money.
yeah, because there's no literal money. That's the problem. No, Joshua Dysart was one of the first like comic professionals that I really got to talk to, and because he would always come to the St. Louis Comic Convention, Project Comic Con, and I tell you this much about Joshua Dysart. He is just the nicest guy anybody could ever meet at a comic convention. Like,
well, I'm gonna stop you right here and just completely say no.
Oh.
Josh Dysart is a huge asshole.
Oh no.
I'm just kidding. Actually, I had the same experience with Josh. He is the nicest dude that I've met in comics, hands down.
Yeah, like suspiciously nice. No, he's really nice.
Sorry,
really...
go on. Finish your story though. I
don't have much of a story. It's just he's really nice and really encouraging, and that's pretty much all I had to say about that.
Would you like to hear my Dysart story?
I would love to. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure it was the second year we did it. So the second year when they had it at the nicer hotel where people were staying there and partying all night and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the year that Food One and DJ Moff did that really big. They did it 2 years in a row for the last year. That after party where they did the live art and music.
Yeah.
It was the one before that, which is actually a really good turnout and pretty, wild little party down in that. Nothing got stupid crazy, but it was a real full dance party with good music and good art going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up. Josh enjoys late night having drinks and talking to people and meeting people, and we ended up just hanging out that show for a while, and then afterwards I had him lubricated enough to be like, hey, you want to go have a few more beers in our we all had a room together, me and the Head Metal Comics guys that you've met, and just like late night drinking whiskey up in the hotel room, literally letting us pick his brain about writing and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like 2:30 a.m. And then it happened the following year too, except for the following year. Well, that was the first year. It was really crazy because Josh had this will sound kind of like an asshole thing, but it's just what it was. He had this little fanboy following him around that just like wouldn't stop asking him minute questions about comics the whole time.
Yeah.
And this kid was getting hammered drunk to the point where he was just falling over himself.
Yeah.
And at that point, we all felt like we were now watching this kid because he wasn't going to leave. But he kept saying the nerdiest fanboy questions to Josh, and Josh was just being as patient as he could till literally the dude was just like falling over flat in the hotel room. The last thing of the night, though, Josh tells us the next day, like the kid is just literally the little puppy behind Josh the whole night anyway. Now he's barely walking and he's following behind Josh. And Josh gets in the elevator and he doesn't know where this guy's room's at. And they go down to Josh's floor and they get off together. And the dude's just falling behind. Josh gets to his door and he opens it up and the guy's just still sludging on right into his room behind him. He's like, dude, what are you doing? And he was just like, huh? He was like, you're not sleeping in my room, man. He's like, I'm sorry I took care of you to stumble to your room and sleep it off. And the guy's just like, oh, okay.
Oh, man, that's awkward.
Yeah, all the way to the hotel room at literally 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, man. Well, Josh has the patience of a saint to put up with that, I'm sure.
He's the guy where I came up with my whole theory of who I'm going to pay attention to on social media. Mm-hmm. I think first and foremost, it's really if I like the art and stuff they're making and I don't know anything about him at all, that I don't care at first. But then I just like who he is. Mm-hmm. I like how he handles himself on social media, and then he's successful. So it's like him and Dirk Manning are basically the two guys that I've followed pretty religiously, let's say, for the 5 years that I've been doing this, because both of them kind of have totally different styles of writers and creators, but
but they both have a lot of insight and they're really prominent on social media. I also follow Jim Zub.
Oh yeah. I'm new to that, but for sure, yeah.
He's usually got a lot of nice things to say.
Yep.
But I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done, because I don't do this podcast to just talk about myself, although I like talking about myself. So
I think I forced it on. I forced you on you too much right off the bat because I was nervous, then I got.
It's okay.
Right on.
But no, I want to talk a little bit about was it the first comic that you did? The head metal comic.
That's correct.
All right. How long did it take you to do that?
To get to the point that you have, the book that you have, which I also just made some pretty huge changes based off some pretty rough criticism, which is not now the books that you have you can't get because I made some pretty serious changes, so the version online is a little updated.
Yeah, okay. I was going to ask you about that because actually I noticed you posted something about that, making some changes and editing it around a little bit. So I was curious.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to get into any specifics if you don't want to.
No, that's fine. Cause it's actually it was a huge learning lesson for me, and so I'll just say this. Yeah, it's because it's so technically to answer your first question though. Now we're going on almost 6 years, and I'm still making changes, which I ultimately believe until someone takes that book and says, "I want to publish this for you, sir, and pay you money." I'm gonna make the fucking changes that I see as I get older and learn, because the book's still not perfect.
Right.
As I was sending that new edition off to get printed this time to have shows for the Small Press Expo, or to have copies for the Small Press Expo, I was literally finding stuff that I still wanted to change already. Just small stuff, but just tweaking it. And so anyway, Ian Wood, the guy who I was telling you about, who is the artist on Occupy Butterfly, he, after doing that book with me, we took it to Small Press Expo 2 years together, and we shared a table together. And during that day of getting to know him a little bit, we started talking about the Head Metal Racket, which was the book we're talking about a boy born with a guitar head, just to give some context on there. It's based in St. Louis. It's a rock and roll comic book that's kind of fantasy, but the only really supernatural, fantastic element is the main character, who is the guitar-headed man.
Yeah.
And I had this musical theme going through it in a lot of different ways. And the chapters that in the book you have start with this time signature idea that I had, where I made a time signature that was a play on a time signature, and it really told what chapter it was and how many pages were in that chapter. So it was a title cover that worked in that way, and then it had narration housed inside of that time signature.
Yes.
But then it also had musical notes that were written in a 4/4 signature, because it was a riff to a song that we had created for the book. So it was just a little inside thing, and it looked pretty seeing the notes all over the place. And then when I met Ian, I got to give you a little backstory on this guy, because he's probably, in my opinion, he's probably going to be a really well-known comics artist, I think, just how much work he's doing and the attention he's getting. I'll be a footnote on his epic ass with the book we did together. But he was a child musical prodigy, so really early in life, he was literally getting to fly around the world, because he's from Canada, and playing in symphonies and
Oh
whatnot.
wow, yeah.
Yeah, he graduated high school at like 15, and then he got I don't know if he finished his master's in music education, but he got high up and then decided he wanted to switch and become a doctor. So now he's living in St. Louis, going to WashU at like third year medical student. So the dude's just pretty
Wow.
freaking smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
And the part that you'll really love is during that time, during last year when he wrote my book, it took him about 9 months, drew my book. It took him about 9 months, and during that time he was having his biggest like third year medical exam that they basically like one of the biggest tests that they have, and he also published over 200 pages of his own drawn comics that year online.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a fucking maniac is what he is. Super interesting to be around with. So when someone like that gives you real criticism like he did to this book, which he looked me in the eye and he said, "What's up with these time signatures?" It's like they don't really work. And I told him how it's a representation of the chapter number and then how many pages. He's like, "Yeah, but then you got these notes and it's kind of," I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's kind of just design then." He was like, "Well," he's like, "I got to be honest. When you gave me that book and asked me if I wanted, a paid gig to work with you and, to check out your art and see if I liked it, or check out your work and see if I liked it and see if I wanted to work with you and then get the pitch." He's like, "I liked a lot of things about it, but the way that time signature was so weird and I have to see it every chapter and I just know that it's so wrong and meaningless in so many ways." It's like a really good musician having to listen to really shitty music and not just want to criticize the fuck out of it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So he was like, "I almost thought about not working with you because of that."
Oh man. that is some harsh criticism.
Yeah. And he's a totally nice guy, sweetheart.
Yeah.
But it just annoyed him that much, and he kind of felt like, man, is he crazy and he doesn't understand this, or he just doesn't care that it's completely not accurate and doesn't work? And then that hurt a little bit because I loved that idea for so long for some reason. And but then when I realized how it made no sense, and I was telling other people about that criticism, they were like, "I don't know, it's just kind of cool and it looks cool."
Right.
But the other element that criticism flushed out was the fact that narration in that book. So again, real quick, the story of the guitar-headed boy, and he's really the ongoing struggle is the freedom of real creative live music versus music television and the commodification of music videos, right? And the narration at each chapter is basically a television program that's come alive, if you will, that communicates as like as a narrator, but what's the unreliable narrator, It's kind of throwing you off the whole book. And so then I realized, well, I got this freaking time signature that makes no sense and it looks pretty, but what if I just made each chapter cover into a snowed out television screen, with like the digital snow on there? Then it emphasizes the fact that it's the TV talking to you. So I was in love with a stupid idea.
Yeah. I think that's part of the creative process too. Because like when you have ideas for things, it'll start in one, with one idea, and that'll balloon out and branch off, and go in all kinds of directions, and it can be really hard to kind of take a step back, and once you're so far into a project and really, really try to evaluate it, and you to see things that maybe the idea started in one area, but it really doesn't apply to what the idea had become. And because I struggle with that with a lot of the stuff that I do all the time. That's what, I guess that's why everybody should work with editors. I say that as somebody who doesn't work with an editor, but
so it's sound advice, folks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if there was ever proof that you needed an editor.
Dirk Manning, I actually, on the editor thing real quick, I harassed him after reading his book, Right or Wrong, because he kind of gives you tips on how to work with artists and editors and stuff, and then I just flipped his advice on him and kind of contacted him and asked him if I could pay him to just copy, edit, read my book, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'll do that for you," which he did, and very generously, and he took the money that I offered him as a paid gig, so he didn't mind it too much. It was only like 40 pages or something to read of comic pages, maybe only even 20 at the time. And then he recommended the editor that he works with and was like, "Hey, this guy should be contacting you." So she at least had a heads up, and she's like, "It's just some random guy, but he's trying to make comics." And so then I was his editor's first, beyond him, I was her second comics project, and she's got a master's degree in literature and English from I think Kansas State or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in Kansas she went. So she's much better with words than I am, and it's helped tremendously.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool of Dirk Manning to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing when you write a book like that,
Yeah.
where you are giving advice and like step by steps of how to like. Because his book, if you haven't read it, is really good for.
Yeah,
It's stuff you already. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, yeah, I got it from him earlier this year, I think, at
Nice.
Planet Comic Con. Yeah, yeah,
So you
and
know exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
do.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, no, I know. I think I know what you're saying. Is a lot of the advice in the book is stuff that you sort of already know, but sometimes you just need to be told.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. When you read it and you kind of get a little script in your head, it's kind of like how positive thinking works because positive thinking can be complete bullshit. And let's face it, half of us are miserable half the time anyway, and we just
Yeah.
still get shit done. But you know, it if you listen to enough of it and then you kind of script it in your own mind, at least you can kind of dial it up when you need to put on that phony act that we all put on of happiness.
Right. So,
As I stare at a black screen now, because if I have the computer on, it's just totally distracting to me, and I'll space out again.
I know that's isn't that just like the greatest struggle of when you're like trying to sit down and create, and you have this thing, this computer, which is probably the greatest tool ever to really
Yeah,
get something done, and then
definitely.
it's also the biggest distraction, the biggest like it's the greatest. Uh, it's like the greatest positive and the greatest negative that could ever happen to a creative person.
Definitely.
Because like I mean I don't know about you, but I'll totally go down like the Wikipedia holes where it's like you're writing something and I need to look something up real quick and need to clarify some information, and then you're reading that about that, and then you just start skipping different pages, and before you know it, it's like an hour and you haven't done any work. You've just been reading about like baseball players from the 60s, and you don't even like baseball. You don't know how you ended up there. But
Uh, I was
no,
gonna say
but
I didn't take you for a baseball guy, but I guess you can get there somehow.
well, I actually, as a kid, I actually was pretty into sports.
Gotcha.
I collected baseball cards in the '90s. I don't really follow sports anymore, but you know, a lot of people do, so it's really not that hard to kind of, I live in St. Louis, so it's not that, or
Yeah.
not in St. Louis, but I mean, we live in the St.
Yeah,
Louis
yeah.
metropolitan area, so it's really not that
You
hard.
dirty East Sider.
Yeah, that's right. The dang Southern Illinoisians. But as you know, in this area, even if you're not into baseball, it's not that hard to keep on the up and up of what's going on with the Cardinals because everybody loves the Cardinals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know generally what's going on. I mean, I was a huge sports junkie as a kid too, and I love playing sports, and I still have a few, sports kind of events that I do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've gotten so far away from enjoying watching professional sports for the most part
Yeah.
that again, I know what they're doing. Like if they're doing well and or when they get beat and they're out, like you said, you just can't not help but hearing. The one thing that I've come to realize is that whether I like it or not, and whether there's a lot of problems with humanity and it's, leaks into baseball and all professional sports, when St. Louis is winning, it's usually a nicer town.
Oh man, it is. Yeah. Wait. Yeah. I mean, everybody says St. Louis is a great baseball town, and I mean, I can see it because people really are just the whole city is just so in such a good mood whenever the Cardinals are doing well, which
Yeah, yeah.
which thankfully is not I don't want to say it's necessarily often, but it's often enough.
Yeah, for the last few years it had been regular,
Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah, pretty
they're
regular.
making it deep, so everyone's happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is just strange and, fucking ironic, but whatever.
Right, right.
For a
So
lot of reasons. Not to
yeah,
just shit on baseball either, but
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I know what you mean, but I wanted to kind of touch on back on your head metal I am sorry. I keep forgetting the actual name of the book. Uh,
Well, that's because, like you said, with the whole name drama that I've got going on, is that I am in the middle, kind of how I said, until someone says they're taking the book and publishing it and giving me money. Like, I'm not going to change names too much, but I did just basically rebrand that from calling it the Head Metal Racket to just Guitar Head, which is what, if you go to the website now, it's called Guitar Head on there. And that was just because it was actually advice I got a long time ago from the very first Project Comic Con. From the first Comic Con we ever did, there was a blogger there going around, and he actually said he would read and review it, and did, and like gave a good review. You know, the guy goes into it, and like he's a dude in his 40s who had a full-time job and was, you know, a successful guy in his own right, and just liked to write about comics, and gave it a good review and everything, but he was like, I don't know about this name. I think they should just call it Guitar Head, you know, and attract the same type of people that, you know, the same reason they call it Spider-Man and Superman. And years later, after thinking about that and just thinking about how many people might see the Head Metal Racket and just have no connection to what the hell that is even talking about, versus Guitar Head, which is just, you know, like Spider-Man, if you will.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what I think. This is obviously, it's ultimately a decision that you have to make, and it can be tough. But one of the things that I like about that comic is that it's so musical, as obvious, you know, because of what it's about. But I would say that Guitar Head sounds like it would be the name of the band, and the Head Metal Racket sounds like it would be the name of the album.
It's a beautiful way of saying it. A beautiful way of fucking with my mind right now, Aaron. But nonetheless, it's I love it. So fuck you.
Well, because I like the name Head Metal Racket, but I get the idea of it being like I get what you're saying with, you know, Guitar Head might be a better name for the book. You know, but.
What you said is 100% valid, and I've gone back and forth, and I've had a lot of people who I really actually respect as creators who have been like, oh, dude, the Head Metal Racket is cool, and I'm like, God damn.
Right, I know. That can be frustrating.
Yeah, but so you want to hear some other, you know how it is to be a crazy person who tries to write things.
Oh, man.
And,
so
there's all these other crazy things. Like, so we started, like I said, it's been like 5 or 6 years now since whatever, and I actually just wrote this short story in an English class in college in a creative writing class, and my teacher was one of my favorite teachers throughout the entire 4 years I was in school. And he just would give us writing prompts, and one was draw a character, any type of character, and create an origin story for it. And then I took that and made that into the comic and everything. And but along the way, I've seen all these other things popping up, and I did a lot of Google searching to see, you know, guitar-headed characters, and I wasn't seeing anything. Over the years, there's been things that have come along, and I'm not trying to be like, those bastards stole my idea. But like that sci-fi show about prosthetics and movie makeup. You ever seen that show?
I don't watch the show, but I know what you're talking about, yeah.
I don't watch the show either, but I saw a clip for the episode, which is literally they had a guitar-themed show where they were making guitar-themed characters. No one just had the head like my character does, but they all had, you know, some of them had like two guitar necks and heads sticking out like horns and weird stuff like that, and then one guy had like a whole body. Awesome stuff, like beautiful. I was like, oh, and I thought, I still think it's awesome because it makes me feel a little less crazy to other people like guitars as much as I do. Right? But then there's also this guy who's a really talented photographer, and I'm not going to try and say his name right. Michael Wintraub, I believe. And he's, for like 20 years, he's been getting in with major bands and like doing high-level photography work for him, and he created this book called Instrument Head. And he's had all these great musicians. We're talking about, you know, legitimate, nationally world-known, money-making machines of music. And he gets them to pose with their instrument, whether it be a drum head or a tuba or a bass or whatever, and they pose it on their head, over their head with their instrument. And it's just different pictures of these famous musicians like that. And he's been doing it for 20 years. He's been working on this project. He's got pictures going back like 20 years. And he just last year got his project rolling. He Indiegogo'd it and got a lot of money, and it's really legit stuff. But this guy's been thinking about the same thing for 20 years, and it's just kind of like, so then when I think about the names of all the things that are out there, and like Instrument Head that he was using, I'm like, man, there's so many people who seem to think that the one key reason, who I also admire and respect, to go Guitar Head is just because at least then, if you don't see the image and you just see a comic book, like somehow, you hear Guitar Head, it's people know it somehow. Like, it's not hard to imagine, oh, Guitar Head, you get some type of image in your head. The Head Metal Racket, you get no real imagery at all.
Yeah, I understand that. Actually, I would agree. I mean, yeah, Guitar Head is, I don't want to say that it's blunt, but it
definitely is, I think.
But it is, and it conjures, like, you hear it and it just conjures a very specific image, like a universal image.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's obviously really important for a title. So I can see the desire to go in that direction.
Do you know Tyler James from the Comics Tribe?
Tyler James Vogel.
Is it Vogel?
Is it Vogel? I don't remember. I know who he is. Maybe it's just Tyler James. Maybe I'm getting Facebook names mixed up.
Yeah, and it could be Tyler James Vogel. That guy's content, man, he's no joke.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I was wondering like how he was so smart with all the stuff he's putting together, and I've never like heard him like use this as a selling point of like why you should trust me until he was doing a Q&A, and he actually went through Harvard Business School, and he's just he's that dedicated to creating comics and stuff that he's building this whole own brand, and he puts out some really good stuff, and a lot of it. He's got a Kickstarter, like a podcast about just funding Kickstarter projects, and it's aimed at comics people. It's pretty fascinating. And again, sometimes you're listening through stuff you've already heard, but that's good at times, and you get new stuff. But he talks about branding in that same way, and he's the one that really started pushing me over the edge of thinking that, it's just, of all the bad things that it is, the worst of it is that it's, poppy and kind of selling out in my own head. The best of it, the best of it is it actually relates to a wider audience immediately.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I remember. I first saw Tyler on digital webbing, on that message board. I don't know if you ever been. Have you ever been on there on digital webbing?
I was kind of got in later than that. I think of when the heyday of that was. I remember kind of looking at it in the very beginning when I was searching for artists, but that was about my only experience on there, was going on there and putting out some, some ads.
I remember before like Facebook and Twitter really, really took off as networking things. That was certainly the place to be for aspiring comic book creators. I mean, we're talking even before like Reddit and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's where I first started searching for artists to work with, and that's where pretty much all of the information was on how to make a comic book, how to self-publish and stuff. And yes, I remember the Comics Tribe stuff there. They were pretty much for the long time after the heyday of digital webbing, they were like the only guys that were really offering concrete information and just like solid advice. Yeah, they definitely know what they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Very well structured and just an engaging guy. So yeah, anyone else out there who's looking for some good content, Tyler James, possibly Tyler James Vogel.
I know Tyler James for sure. Like I said, you see names like pop up in places, and sometimes it's easy to just mix them up. Or
you are 100% right. It is Tyler James Vogel.
Right on.
I just looked.
Vindication. Oh, I remember the other thing I was going to ask you. So you were talking about doing conventions and small press expo. How have conventions generally gone for you? If you don't mind me asking, we don't have to talk specifics like numbers, of course, but I mean like in general, like how do you feel about doing conventions? Because this is something that I am constantly going back and forth on. I love conventions, but I also hate them.
I usually toss the money out in front of my feet as I walk off the convention floor every night
right.
to give back to my fans. And I've got a class on how to do this. It's $5,000. Feel free to just PayPal me, and but other than that, I can't talk about. No, I mean it's just like it is for 99% of us. It's pretty shitty most of the times, and I've had a few really good conventions. The best ever I had was the Project Comic Con in Kansas City.
Planet Comic Con.
Right. Planet Comic Con. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
The most fun that I've ever had, and I totally missed this show, and it was a great show, and never did tremendously well, but was that Project Comic Con in St. Louis. That was just awesome. But yeah, Planet Comic Con, and then my first year at Wizard World was actually really big, and from those first two kind of early on experiences, I thought I was actually going to have a lot more luck than I did, and then since then, it's just I won't even do Wizard World anymore. I have no interest in doing Wizard World.
Yeah, me neither. That's what I was going to ask you. I did because Wizard World started in St. Louis. Oh gosh, it was I think the first year I started doing conventions. 2012, I think.
Yeah, I believe
5 years
that.
ago. And I did the first 2 years, so I did 12 and 13. And after that, I stopped doing them, and I didn't even realize it's been so many years since I stopped going to Wizard World. Like, it's totally out of my mind.
Yeah. I think I did the first 3 years. In fact, I know I did it the first 3 years, and then I actually might have done 4 years because that was the year, that might have been the year where I was fully like, let's say this, you won't ever find me doing criticism of something that I don't like, even just like reviewing. Like, things that I like have things that I don't like about them, so I'll talk honestly, but I'm not going to just shit on things or creators or people or even events of people trying to put things together. However, Wizard World has pushed me to that edge where I feel like I'm speaking my mind honestly, and I'd rather it get in some other creators' heads that don't have that much money, that they pushed me over the line of just about being like, just saying fucking Wizard World is corrupt.
Yeah, I
just full of shit.
I really felt like I was being taken advantage of by doing Wizard World, and I'm the same way. I really try to, like, publicly, I try to maintain pretty positive, attitude about everything, and if I really don't like something, I just won't talk about it, unless, like you said, unless I'm really talking critically about something. I think there's a distinction to be made.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't even try to go out of my way to really like trash Wizard World, but as a convention, I just felt so, just taken advantage of, like, just it's a money sink, and I think that they make their money off of the I think that they I guess what bothers me most about Wizard World is that I think that not only do they rip off the creators that the convention is supposedly supposed to be about, but I think they also rip off the attendees and the fans that are going there. And so that bothers me more. Like, I wouldn't feel so bad about spending $300 for a table if I knew that there were lots of people there and they weren't getting price gouged at the door just to come in, So.
Yeah. But, and it's, it's almost like it's $375 a year now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, like, I stopped going when it was $325, and I know it's gone up. Like, gosh,
the last year I went, it was $350, and I heard that they were going up another $25, and I was just like, listen, I know a lot of people there who have made money. And the first year, like I said, it was probably, I don't know if it was better than Planet Comic Con, but it was a show where I made all my money back for the table, and then just had, a fat wad of cash to go out and basically have fun with that night. It wasn't like I fucking, made $5,000 up in that piece over a weekend, but it was good time money. And, but then, I'm the same. The reason that I will step out further, again, I'm not going to go on Facebook or anything and like tag them and be like, make a rant about why they're so bad. But in this context, if anyone cares, then they're listening to us talk, then at our level, it's just such, beyond the fact that it's just most likely not going to turn a profit or make your money back at all at our level of creatorship and people like us, it's they did like just straight up start lying to me about shit and like pulling like little scams to try and fish me to come back in. And then the last year that I went, they were running this thing where, Rory and Sean, right? Rory and Gibson.
Yeah.
So they were already booked to go, but like Wizard World wasn't putting the pictures of the artists on like, links to their stuff and like announcing that they were going to be there. And it was like 3 weeks out. And Sean had said that he had written them and be like, "Hey, did you get our pictures? What's up?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we're having trouble loading this stuff, getting the pictures on there." So it only shows like the big names going. It doesn't show any of the smaller like Artist Alley type people. And I'm getting messages from them and from the actual person that I met when I was there. It was a female, I think I can't remember what her name was, doesn't matter, but who was working there and like helping us. And she's like, "Chris, we really enjoyed having you here these last few years, and we're about to be sold out. Do you want to, get in on the last minute table? No price discount or anything, but just like need to act soon." And then finally I was like, "All right, you got me. It's going to be my last year. I'm going to just try it one more time." And there were so many empty booths that literally there were like, I had 3 booth space. I had the space of 3 booths to myself at that show because they didn't sell out. It was just, people were already starting to realize that it wasn't profitable, but yet they're just sitting there and lying to the rest of us and like, being Weasley about putting things on their website with, proper timing to actually help the creators try and possibly advertise.
Yeah, I agree. I think you talk to most people, unless they're like a professional creator that's at the level where they're a guest, and even then you'll probably still hear negative stuff. But you talk to most of the really like indie self-publishers, I guarantee you it's mostly negative things that they will have to say about Wizard World, which is why I'm not shocked that now that they're in all this financial trouble and there's a lawsuit about something. I forget. I don't actually pay attention to them that much, but I am surprised that they keep doing so many shows a year, even though they keep constantly having to cancel them because they're not making money.
Yeah, it seems weird, and all I can really say is that they will be getting my money this year because I will go for one day so that I can get a piece of gutter sampling signed by Tara Reid.
Well, I mean, I guess that is well, I mean, I can't argue with that.
You're supposed to just play the little snare roll there after that.
Well, that is what Wizard World really is. It's it's about the celebrities, and that's fine. Like, if that's what because there are a lot of people that just one of the years that I went, I forget who the big guests were. It might have been like some Doctor Who actors, like Matt Smith, like that, one of the big actors.
Gotcha.
Not the old, not like an old Doctor, like the current one that was on TV at the time.
The hot one.
Yeah, exactly, the hot one. I think he was there, and also the girl, the companion, Amy, the redheaded girl that was in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Gotcha.
I think she was also there. So there was like big celebrities. Bruce Campbell was probably also there too. And I knew a lot of people that were excited to go to that show just to meet those celebrities. And then they were like, I would tell them like, yeah, I'm not really that into Wizard World anymore. And there was this real like disconnect, I guess, because they were just like, well, it's a comic convention, and why wouldn't you be there? And I'm like, well, because it's not really about the comics. And I went there that year, and I knew people that went there to meet the celebrities, and then like didn't come and even see me like at my table. And I was just like, man, you guys.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I'll try and transition us out of shitting on Wizard World so much and say that I really have enjoyed a lot of the other cons, and elements of Wizard World were enjoyable, but I'll even say this: if you've never gone to Wizard World, go next year, try it for yourself, and I don't think too many of you are going to be going back unless you guys got kids and they're driving you crazy to go get some expensive shit.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but beyond that, one of the things, the biggest lessons I've gotten, I'm horrible at applying this, but at going to shows, the reason that I had the best show ever, which was like, to try and think back to what that number actually was, I don't know, but I literally had hundreds of dollars on Saturday night profit after getting table back. Mm-hmm. And that was like the first and only time that's ever happened where I think it was, like $230 at the end of Saturday night,
Yeah.
something like that. And uh, the reason that happened was because I totally pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and I wore that mask of the guitar head that I have,
Yeah, yeah. That's an eye
which
catcher.
yeah, and I totally love that mask. I had it, built by an actual working designer out in California who does some really amazing cosplay stuff, and he's actually all of his cosplay stuff in his own personal site that he has on, that he has a website, but he also advertises on Facebook. Landed him a job with Metal Gear Solid, so he's a badass dude. I look at that mask as a really
That's cool.
uh, yeah, it's a really cool piece of artwork of something that's my creation. But wearing it makes me feel totally uncomfortable because I'm not a freaking actor who's played upon many stages, Aaron. I'm just not that guy. And like, even though we talk about music and we make music regularly, I've never played in public on a stage. It's always just been in, for 6 years now, it's been in my jam room straight every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So to put that mask on, and like then I'll even like wear little costumes with it of what like scenarios from the book, and it draws people in, but I feel so fucking awkward about it. And then I have to transition from taking the mask off to them being like, "Oh hey, can I tell you about the book?"
Right,
And
right.
but it worked like crazy there, and I've never done that again that aggressively. Like that weekend, I went knowing how uncomfortable it already made me to wear that thing in public,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought these costumes, and I was like, all right, for literally hours at a time, I'm going to wear the costume and stand in front of the booth and walk around and track people as they come up to me. And it worked amazingly. And I've never had the balls to do it again because I felt so I'd get a random high school kid walk by and be like, this idiot. And I'd be, like, the rage would set in for a minute. And I'd be like, good thing I'm behind this mask, motherfucker.
Right, right. Oh, man. Yeah.
Just shit like that, which is meaningless. But in my, feeble ego,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm not an actor. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I get you though, but I think that is sort of the struggle that what you just described is exactly the struggle that most comic book creators have doing conventions. It's because it's like one thing to try and hone the skill of making a comic, and then trying to sell that comic is a completely different set of learned abilities.
Oh, hell yeah.
And a lot of people, I mean, I know I really struggle with it because I don't I don't know how to talk to people all the time. But
Yeah.
no, I'm not surprised that worked really well for you. That because like one of the reasons, and I would say maybe the biggest reason that people go to comic book conventions, certainly like a Wizard World type of convention. That was the one you were at, right? That you were talking about, where you wore the mask.
No, I have worn it at Wizard Worlds before,
Oh,
but
okay.
like it was Planet Comic Con in
Oh,
Kansas
okay.
City.
Well, Planet
Where
Comic Con, yeah.
yeah.
That's another good example. Planet Comic Con is a little Wizard World like.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I had much better time every time I go there though.
me too. Me too. I've gone to Planet Comic Con the last 5 years. Ever since I started doing conventions the first year they went to the big convention in Bartle Hall at the convention center.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, yeah. So I'm not surprised that went well for you because one of the reasons I think a lot of people will go to conventions is just for the party aspect of it. Everybody just
Yeah.
wants to wear costumes and just kind of hang out and look at stuff and that can be really frustrating to a lot of creators because
Oh yeah.
a lot of creators aren't necessarily there for the party. They want to sell books, and the comic convention scene has kind of evolved into more of a like a hangout scene than a scene where you go to look for new and interesting things.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of people have a hard time processing. I mean, there are a lot of people that frankly, and I understand this because I'm kind of the same way. When you're looking for new things, you will find it on the internet. You don't need to go to a convention to look for the new thing. If you haven't heard of it at the convention, then you probably aren't going to hear about it anywhere else, and that's
Yeah.
a negative.
Yes.
Because it's so I can understand that struggle, but so I guess what I'm getting at is I'm not surprised that went really well for you because that's more like almost like getting into the spirit of it for a lot of people, and I'm sure they just respond to that, maybe even subconsciously. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I mean, let's face it. Advertising is a subconscious mind fuck.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
And when you really start reading up about it and learning about it and realizing that you have to go there to do it successfully, it makes you want to do it even less.
Right.
Like, because it can still not work, and now you've got this mindset of, man, okay, I got to find something that can literally subconsciously get into these people's heads to make them just want to come back a little bit. And that's where you then, and you can still totally fail at this. Is why people are like, well, everybody would do that. A lot of people do this and still fail.
Right.
But that's how you get things where, you get clickbait titles and stuff, and you're just constantly putting out clickbait titles to get people to type on stuff and then hope that one will stick around and actually read something. And it's just like, going down that road
yeah.
seems bad to me.
Well, that's the frustrating thing about advertising and marketing, because everybody hates it. Everybody hates the idea that they're being manipulated, but everybody knows that it works. So it's like really, there's no way to like process it almost. You just have to just accept it.
For sure. So I gotta ask you now, since you got it in my mind, and let me start by saying you could fill 1 million libraries with all the books that I haven't read. Have you read any Philip K. Dick?
Yeah, actually, I have read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Right on. I have not read that. I've read a lot of his short stories and like a Philip K. Dick reader I have, and I've been on this one for like 2 or 3 months now. I've read it a few times over and over. I'll read like a 10, 12 page short story before bed, several times a week. And one's called Sales Pitch, and it's literally just the story of robots taking over advertising so much that it drives this guy insane. That it's, he's willing to leave, and it's science fiction in the future, and they're, already interstellar travel, and like he's fleeing the planet to go have a more ancient way of life in the 20th century.
Right.
This robot is literally with him to the death, basically, and just drags him to his demise, still trying to sell him on the validity of the product, which is himself, the robot himself.
That sounds good.
Oh, man, and it's just, that guy was a pretty prophetic weirdo, but advertising, I think about it like that, and I'm just like, fuck, sometimes I hate it, and why am I trying to even do it?
Yeah.
Because all the other stuff I enjoy, but, and we're working like hard on videos for whenever we launch a Kickstarter and whenever it's done, trying to make these videos somewhat interesting, but they're still just ads.
Exactly, yeah, that's what they are. Yeah, it's tough. I kind of go back and forth with it every couple of years, and right now I'm kind of in the headspace where I'm just gonna sit down and create stuff, and I'm not gonna think about how I'm gonna market it, and hopefully somebody out there will eventually see it somehow magically and say, this is good, I think I can make money off this, and they will try to do all the hard work for me, and we all know how that's gonna turn out.
No, I hear that's a thing now.
Yeah.
You can go to school for it.
Yeah.
Trump University.
Yeah.
I won't say anything else there, I promise.
Right. Yeah, guaranteed success.
For sure. I think I may have mentioned this to you, but I actually work for an art publisher.
Oh, okay.
So not comics, it's I won't say the name. It's a St. Louis business. It's been there for 25 years. I admire the company a lot. These two dudes have been holding down a successful business in St. Louis that deals with artists from the coasts, and publishing a lot of limited edition prints of fine art, quote unquote, for a long time, and making it work. So I'll say that because it's all true. I admire and respect the company. You can't look at it and be like, holy shit, these guys have made something that most people in St. Louis have no clue about it. And I'm not going to say the name so that I can be a little bit more honest about things.
Sure, yeah.
And that's why I led with that, being very gracious, because they are all the things that I mentioned. But then after almost 4 years of seeing what it really, really takes and who really, really gets published in that world, and I've heard you talk about this too, so you kind of know where I'm going with, where I'm not going to go off the, completely overly emotional rant of it's all fixed.
Yeah.
But, nepotism is real, and, wanting to work with your friends and people that make money is real. And when you see we've got a few artists who are really well known and internationally, and they're making us so much money that when one of them says, and they're all older men too, so when one of them says, "Oh, I've got this new artist that I like. I'd like you to publish something of hers or his for me for whatever deal I've worked out with them," then you can. Please, it'd be a big favor to me. And it's like, okay, well, hey, he's the man. He's making all the money. He wants to help his friend out. So there you go.
It's frustrating to have to just accept that, and there's a lot of people that kind of thing would make them angry, and I mean for obvious reasons. But
I'm pissed. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's to me it just seems like that's just the way the world is, like at every level, like that's just human interaction,
Yeah.
And but yeah, gosh, my I think the second Planet Comic-Con I did, I went and talked to Marvel had a representative there, Marvel Comics. They had a CB Cebulski.
Yep.
And he was their talent coordinator, no, he was like their talent scout. He was the guy who literally scouted their talent. I don't remember if I've told you this.
He's a pretty talented comic guy.
Yeah, I don't remember if I've told you this story before or if you've heard me say it.
I've seen you have interaction with him online, but no, I don't know any stories.
Well, I haven't. I don't know if I've talked to him too much online.
Oh, is that not? I'm thinking of another guy who has an initial name that's like C.
You're thinking of he'll appreciate me saying his name, even though I know he's not going to listen to this podcast. You're thinking of Kansas City comic book writer C.W. Cook.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
that guy's legit too. I like all his stuff.
Yeah, he and I have a friendly online rivalry, but no, I'm talking about a different guy entirely. CB Cebulski. Okay. He works for Marvel Comics, and at the time he was.
Sorry, sir, I didn't mean to offend you. to Mr. What, Cebulski?
Cebulski, yeah.
Yeah, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you, and I will do whatever you want if you hear this.
Well, he's not their talent scout anymore. That's actually a different story, unrelated to what I was telling. But I spoke to him. I gave him some comics, and he was really nice, really positive. And he was kind of telling me, because I mean this was still pretty. I mean this would have been like 5 years ago, 4 years ago maybe. I mean I was certainly not making the. I was pretty still fresh into making comics, but you got to be a little aggressive, and I am not a very aggressive person, so this was like a big deal for me to be like, I'm gonna go actually talk to a guy from Marvel,
Yeah.
And I went and talked to him, and he was really nice, and he was kind of giving me the lowdown on how, you just make work, keep hone your skills, and then he straight up told me. And I mean, it's like it sounds really cynical the way I say it, but I honestly, he said it a lot nicer than this. But he was like, do everything you can to be a part of the community. And he said this, like I said, it sounded nicer the way he said it, but it really bluntly, he basically just said, we basically just hire people that are recommended to us by other creators. And he goes, so you're from St. Louis, so like Cullen Bunn is from St. Louis, and there's some other like Matt Kint, and there's some professional creators from St. Louis.
There's like 3 or 4, maybe 5 really talented dudes in St. Louis, I think.
And he
said, I take that. I didn't mean to say only talented, but talented guys that are making it work financially.
And he kind of straight up told me, he was like, so and so was working for Marvel, and they recommended we look at Cullen Bunn stuff, and we did, and we liked it, so we hired him, and then Cullen brought in this guy, and he goes, that's kind of how things work, so just keep making work and network with people and just be a part of the community. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I guess I should just walk over to Cullen Bunn and say, hey, Cullen, can I be your friend? And obviously that's not, that's not the way to do things. But I think for a lot of creative people, that's really frustrating to hear, because for some people, I don't want to get into like a big discussion about personality types and extroverts and introverts and anything like that, mostly because I don't actually know anything about it. But
I'm a schizophrenic.
Yeah, exactly. For some people, it's just like, it's really easy to just make friends with everybody, and for other people, it's not. And it can be really frustrating for a lot of creatives who I think are a little more on the neurotic side, uh, to just somebody once told me, it was my dad actually, was like trying to give me advice, and he's like, people that like do well on in creative work, they have a lot of followers, so you should get more followers on Facebook. I'm like, great advice. I'll just do that. And it's
I've received the same advice from multiple sources.
right, yeah. It's just like get more followers, and I'm like, if I knew how to get more followers, I would have more followers, especially because it's. And I'm biting my tongue here because I'm not going to go on some big rant, but it can fuel your cynicism when you're perceiving yourself as this struggling artist, and you're just really focused on trying to make something, and you can't understand why nobody pays attention to you, and then some guy who just made something that went viral and it's not particularly great, but just they had the perception is that they had an easy path to popularity, and they just they'll just say something like, "Oh, I just posted this on a message board, and it really just took off, and everybody started sharing it on Facebook, and now I've got 10,000 followers. So if you want to get popular, just go get 10,000 followers." And I'm like, I don't want to hear that from you of all people. You who's like, well, you didn't work to get 10,000 followers. You got lucky in that whatever you did just caught fire at the right time in the right way, and that's like catching lightning in a bottle is such a hard thing to do. And I'm not saying that like they're wrong for doing that, because I do think that there is something like creative intuition where people can just make something that just takes off. But it sounds like that'll happen, and then they want to talk about it like it's like, well, why don't you just do that? And it's like, because it's creative intuition, like it's
magic.
Yeah, it's magic, exactly. Yeah.
However you want to. A lot of people hate that word. I personally enjoy it quite a bit, and alchemy, whatever. It all exists to me, including the science of it as well. But yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. But I don't want to go on. I don't want to. I'm always hesitant because I don't want to go on big rants about. Like, you don't want to sound like you have sour grapes, like you're just some pouting, unpopular creative person. So, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you what I ultimately think about it, and I will start by acknowledging that it could be just a coping mechanism, but it's a pretty strong one that I've developed. And most things that I've developed in my adult life, I've obviously stolen from other people, taken little bits and chunks of pieces that really work naturally for me, and then the pretty much defining element at that point is then to get all of those pieces into a title, give it a title that I can relate to and have it be like my own thing. Like someone's trying to sell you on their thing, whatever it is. It's just like having your own. And then one of the, terms that I've come up with is chunking art into my life. And I wrote a little essay and put it on Facebook a while back. And it's something I've thought about before. And I kind of knew I was doing it at first, but as soon as I realized that that's exactly what I was doing, I leaned into it, if you will, and then started going for it more in that direction. But when the comic book, the guitar-headed comic book, came up from a short story, and then I was making music with some guys, and the first guy who drew it was just like, dude, I should make this into a comic book. And I was like, okay, I'll write you a short 8-page script or an 11-page or something, and if you're really going to draw it, then let's do it. And he just did it, right? But I had always now I had a little band that I was playing with, and I always just wanted to be in a rock and roll band and make original music for the longest time. And I was like, no, this thing's just kind of happening. So what can I do? I'm also in college right now. Let me enroll in a music class. Took some music appreciation. I took a class on vocal instruction because I'm the singer in my little band. And, started actually using that whole project to get me better at music in general. So that's just something that I wanted. And then it also had the side effect of being better at my writing. So that went on for a few years. And then I had a bunch of ideas in my head of what I wanted to start writing next. And one of them that stuck with me, and, I don't know if you pay attention to things like this, but the ideas that keep coming back pretty fully formed that I don't even really have to think about hard. Like as soon as something conjures that image in my mind, I can kind of have the story in my head. I know that that's the one I should write because other ones that aren't as fleshed out just aren't there. And at Occupy Butterfly, which, real quickly, the pitch there is that my girlfriend, when she was a little girl in elementary school, was excited about a butterfly project that they were going to have. And then the next day they learned that they had to kill these butterflies by putting them in a little jar with some poison in there and killing them so that they stay perfectly intact, so then you can pin them to a board. And she was like, I'm not doing that. That's insane. She refused to do it. And her protest was that instead she drew pictures of butterflies and hung them around the room. Mm-hmm. Well, when she told me that story, I was like, oh man, I was the little murderer that was like, we gotta fucking kill those butterflies. And that's how I was. Yeah. And then it has like some other, I think about life and death and killing more than I would like to be honest, but I can't stop it. Mm-hmm. And not like in a weird serial killer way, which that totally sounded. Have to preface that, yeah. yeah. But hey, that's in the culture. It's like we just all are consumed by it, right? Yep. The culture of humans, not just America. Right. But anyway, so then as I was doing that, I then made further steps to like think about what I was why I was so drawn to it. So like I took that was in 2015 when I was writing that story. I took the whole year off and then went as a vegetarian to like kind of like test like the idea of why I was so easily convinced to kill these butterflies and think nothing about it, and she was just more naturally kind to all animals. So I did something like that, throw things into my life that make the art actually affect me in ways that I personally think are better. I'm not telling anyone else to go vegetarian. Right. I could care less, like, I mean, I'm not going to be able to affect anyone's real personality in that way. But if it's really affecting my life, then these projects seem to continue to make sense to me, and I watch them get better, and I'm still delusional and hope that I'll make $3 million and retire.
Yes, but I agree. I agree with kind of what the central point I think you were making there, which is, like I got to that point too, where I was really struggling with the idea of like who am I as a creator? What kind of things am I making? And you get to a point where you have to stop trying to please everybody and just work for yourself and really kind of cultivate that. And I think that's the true. I don't want to get on some like flowery, pretentious, like that's what being a real artist really is.
Yeah.
I think that people do pick up on that. But maybe not necessarily in a mass marketable way, unfortunately.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't have to be mass marketable, but it's the ones like now we're talking and we've known each other for how long now? 5-6 years, maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's like then when you see someone because I've also seen other guys who came in and like had way different attitudes towards me than you did, mm-hmm. and whose stuff like I just quite honestly didn't think looked that good. And as a guy who can't draw, I'm not talking shit about anyone who's just trying to do it. But if you're trying to tell me that your artwork is so great, and then I'm looking at my artwork that I've hired an artist who I admire and think has technical ability, I'm going to compare it to that. That's what I'm going to be thinking of as a good artist. So I've got a standard. And then there are these guys who just are completely like way beyond the normal delusion. Yeah. And they're talking all this shit about taking over like. We'll make more money than Image Comics. We'll have our own. And it's just like, oh boy,
man. Yeah, you start to talk with a lot of these like up and coming small publishers, and you start to hear that. You hear that's kind of attitude thrown around, and I'm just like, man, do you really think that? Like with what you're showing me, like I don't know. I don't know. I think there is a certain amount of ambition that is needed to really. I think there's a certain amount of arrogance that is required to be an artist.
For sure.
Sure. to just have the arrogance to do something and put it out there. But yeah, that will also attract or maybe play easily into people that are really, really delusionally arrogant. And there's it is what it is. I don't know, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it then to go back to what I'm saying is however you do it. I just gave 2 examples of how I did it with my stories. And the next big thing I work on is kind of, I don't want to use the word alien, but it's like a higher power contacting human civilization story, mm-hmm. With a serious message. And it's ultimately about, just the fragility of life. And so for that one, I'm really thinking of like, how can I actually do things? And I've been doing this for a couple of years, getting this one ready in my head, and then like thinking of things to have other projects that I do that are then focused on making me, as the piece of shit that I am, do something nice for other pieces of shit that I see randomly on the street, and just trying to be a little bit nicer. Because there's, so many of us assholes out there.
That's true. Yes, sir. Well, we have been talking for it's a little over an hour, I think. So I think we might have to wind down this episode. I don't know how many people like to listen to me blather on for more than an hour, no matter how interesting the guest is.
Well, I was jumping around so much that, I don't really...
That's okay.
I'm sorry that I totally dove into... It was just excitement that led me down the path of destroying your questions at times.
That's okay. I am not a professional anything. This is, as I like to say, this is a real Mickey Mouse operation, which most people don't understand that anymore, because they think Mickey Mouse, Disney is like a huge corporation and everything they do is, slick. Yeah, Mickey Mouse it's an old phrase, but I like old-timey phrases. But
now since you're saying that, and I got to be honest, I've definitely heard it, and I've never heard the actual explanation. What's it mean exactly?
Well, it's referring to just like derogatory, because Mickey Mouse is a cartoon, and
so just in the early times, it wasn't respected at all.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Yeah, I mean, heck, even I might be showing my ignorance here in saying this, because maybe there is an actual real phrase to it, but that's the way I always understood it, and I never bothered to look into it.
Well, I had one goal for this, and that was to make you do that, just so I could come out as the victor, the guy who made the other guy.
Success, possibly.
Calling him out.
Well, yeah, that's a good way to end the conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, in all honesty.
No, it was great. I prefer just kind of loose conversations, because I don't really have I know a few friends of mine that will listen to this podcast because they have nothing better to do, but this goes into what I was saying earlier, is I do this for myself. I like talking to people, and this is the excuse I have to kind of connect and network with other comic book creators, and just kind of hang out and get to be able to know and talk to people outside of the comic convention. So yeah, it was a good time. I was really glad you agreed to do this.
Right on, man. And I one more shout out to you and Ed. The Birdlander looks really great, and every time it pops up, I read a little bit more of it, and I should just start from start to finish and get it over with.
Well,
but I'm probably just gonna wait till I get the actual collected works,
right,
and then do it all.
No, I understand that, and that's why we haven't really pushed it that hard. We actually finished the book, earlier this year, and it's kind of been in a few different processes of how we were going to go to print for the collected graphic novel, but this hasn't been announced or anything, but it's also not necessarily a secret. But early next year, we're going to do a small Kickstarter to fund the printing of a graphic novel. So we will hopefully have that soon, and then we can really. Then you'll start seeing me really push it and talking about it.
Right on. Well, yeah. Next time, as a leaving point for something for us to talk about, Tyler James Vogel always recommends having a creator that's running a Kickstarter at the same time for cross advertising.
Yes.
I've got one that I've been working on for years for the Guitar Head, or maybe if I end up going back to Head Metal Racket because you just got in my brain so much. Whatever it's going to be. And I've got a lot of good videos. What we did was we've made a lot of pretty interesting, fun, good videos that we spent a lot of time editing. So all throughout the month that we run it, we're going to be, instead of just having to have static images or stuff, we're going to have more videos to keep popping out and trying, like when we buy Facebook ads and stuff. So, I mean, we're not asking. I'm literally, at this point, I'm doing the $1 comic book Kickstarter, where I'm just going to charge $1. Those PDF flippers that I'm making, I'm going to sell those for $1, and that'll be the lowest entry. I'm going to be asking for $1. You can get the book, but then I'm also obviously going to sell the book at higher prices, and I'm probably going to do a hardback version of it and stuff too. for those who want to pay that. However, all we need to succeed is just that $1 mark, and see how we can. So we got a little strategy and stuff that we're working on, and if you ever want to talk about that,
definitely, we'll definitely talk about that.
Cool.
Sounds good, man. Well, we'll sign off here, but before we leave, where can people find your work if they're looking for it online?
You can read that story of the boy born with a guitar head at www.headmetalcomics. That's HEADMETAL comics COMICS.com. And then Facebook at Head Metal Comics as well is about the only social media I really use. I have a Twitter, but under the same thing, Head Metal Comics. But I'm bad at social media. I really am.
You and me both.
I try, but I mean, it's just we could get this conversation going all over again, and I won't do it to you.
That's a whole different podcast we can do. Yeah. All right. Well, I definitely recommend checking out the guitar-headed boy. Whatever its name eventually becomes, but it's cool and it's unique, and there is not another comic out there that looks like it, and I think that's really important for comics. So
thank you. Yeah, the artist will appreciate that compliment.
Absolutely. So I would recommend it for no other reason than just for that, but there are of course other reasons. But
fantastic.
But we're ending the podcast, so I don't have time to go into them. But. Thank you.
For another day.
Yeah, for another day.
You're welcome, man.
Christopher, thank you for doing this, and we will definitely do this again sometime.
Take care, brother.
Cool.